Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Shulchan Aruch Yomi Iyun, the Iyun shir, the Iyun portion of the shir. Um, Today we learned an interesting halacha. It's based on a Gemara Menachos and Daf Mem Aleph. If your tzitzis got ripped in the area where it's kosher to put the tzitzis, basically less than 3 tefachim from the corner and more than 1 tefachim from the end. If you look on your tzitzis, you have a hole in that area and you put the tzitzis through them. If any part of that area ripped, so it's a problem to sew it. Resew it is a problem. According to Rashi, it's Xera Darabanan. The Rashi says the reason is because when you sew it together, you can have some strands left over at the end of your stitches, and you're going to add on to those threads. Let's say you'll take the stitches that you have in place, you'll take them off, or there were no stitches there at that point, and you're going to add on. So that strand that you use to sew it, obviously, when you put it on, you'd have in mind to use it as one of your 8 chutim of the stitches. You add another 7 on, so 7 will be kosher, but the 1 will be tasev lomin also. It says gedilim tasalach. It has to be that you made it in the right order. You have to have kavanah to make it, and you didn't have kavanah to make it. You decided after you made it, I'll use it for my stitches. That would be a problem. Tasev and also Rashi's worried about that. That's why you can't, and therefore, according to Rashi, even there's no rip. The Shulchan Aruch says in Siv Vav that you can't even be told for anything over there because we're worried that you're going to leave it over and you're going to be over Tassel. And also, according to Rav Amram Hagon, there was a Gon, lived before Rashi. He says the reason of the Gemara that you shouldn't be tofer over there is because it's talking about the Dafki case where it ripped entirely the knaf. When you repatch it and put it back on, so therefore, since it's less than 3 etzbos by 3 etzbos, it's not considered a beged. For a lot of halachas of tuma, it's not considered a beged. So therefore, it's considered a separate entity from the main talis. And when you resew it, it's like you have 2 begadim. You have your tzitzis and you have something else, and you're going to put your tzitzis on something else, which is not attached to the main beged. So how is that going to pater? How is that going to be tzitzis for your beged? That's what Rav Amram learns. They have according to Rav Amram, if it ripped a little bit, there's no problem of resewing it because it didn't detach completely. That's Rabbeinu Amram. Now, ostensibly, also according to Rav Amram, it's a problem of Tasev Lomin Asoi. Because when you go ahead and resew this thing, so I believe Rav Amram is saying also that even if you would consider it to be part of the old beged, when you resew it, you are resewing it with the tzitzis on them. So therefore, the asiya of tzitzis for putting on the string should always be after making the corners. That's why there is an opinion in Siv Dalid. He said there is an opinion of Yesh Omrim. I believe this is the Mukhe Yosef. He says at the end of Siv Dalid, he says Rabbeinu Amram only said the Ram Lo Nifsa Ela Shitzitio Shayibo Beish Tafro Makash Tafro Etabo Tzitzis Kosher. It's only talking about if you had tzitzis when it was not cut off, and then you just reattach it with the tzitzis, because then it's tassel and also. It's both according to Rashi and Rabbeinu Amram. Milki Yosef learns Rabbeinu Amram. It would be a problem of tasev lomin also. What is tasev lomin also, and what is so bad about it? There's 2 ways I always grappled with when I was in yeshiva. Tasev lomin also. Tasev means that I have to actively make it. And not asoy, not made by itself. That's one way of understanding tassel and also. Another way of understanding tassel and also is that it has to be made in order, right? First you make the beged, you make the corners, and then you put on the tzitzis. If you put on the tzitzis and then attach it to the beged, that's mina asoy. It's made out of order. It's made retroactively, and that's a problem because that's not the normal way of making tzitzis. That's made in order. So one way, the one chisaron is saying that it's not made in order. Another chisaron is saying that it's made by itself. I have a third shot. Which basically I think I want to merge, say this is Chaim the Gemara and Mem Aleph. The reason that Lo Yitfor, a little different than Rashi and Rabbeinu Amram, basically what they're saying is when you go and sew within 3 tefachim, so basically you're sewing potentially a corner of your bag, a kanfe bidem. Gidilim tasalach arba kanvos ksuscha, as I've explained previously, that there's 2 chiyuv in my tzitzis. There's a chiyuv on the gavra, and chiyuv on the chefsa. The chefsa, you have to make a strong garment, and making a strong garment is to make sure that the corners are stitched properly. They have to be stitched properly, the corners, so therefore the beged doesn't rip, so it's able to stay on you. It's a 4-cornered beged. You don't want it to rip at the edges. You don't want it to rip, so you have to make it. You have to sew it very well on the edges. It's not talking about putting strands over there. That might be what it talks about in Sefer Bamidbar, by the end of Kriya Shema, where we say Sulahem tzitzis, right? Gedilim and tzitzis are two different things. Tzitzis is like tzitzis, roshi, strands your hair. It's like putting tassels, let's say, on the edges of the beged. That would be maybe a chovas agavra, an addition, an adornment to the beged. But gedilim tasalach is just talking about the actual quality of the corners of the beged. They have to be made well. So when it becomes ripped, you shouldn't sew it again because tasev lo min asoi, different shan tasev min asoi. Tasev min asoi is that it has to be made the first time. Everyone knows if you stitch something, if it becomes ripped and you re-sew it, it's weaker than it was made the first time. If it was made the first time, it was stitched properly the first time. There was no rip there. So it's much strong. It's a stronger beged. If it's ripped and you re-sew it, even though technically it will last, but it's not as strong anymore. And that's the problem of tasa v'lomin asoy. Tasa, you have to make it the first time. Lomin asoy, not something that was made already once, and you're remaking a second time because it's a weaker beged. It's a weaker corner, and your four corners are not gedilim. They're not gedilim tasalach. They have to be making with the right kavana, with the right precision, with the right strength, with the right durability, and strength and suppleness. That's the characteristics of kilayim. Also, has to be done in that way in order to make it a proper beged. There's also an Iyun to put on tzitzis after, but that's not what we're talking about over here. I'm talking about tasalach, gedilim tasalach. Tasa is in the pasuk of gedilim on the corners of your beged. You're supposed to make it like that. Nothing to do with the mitzvah of tzitzis. And it is like Rashi and Rambam says. Rashi's worried about that you're gonna add on strands to it. Tassel and Asr. Rambam says it's not part of the original beged, and you're putting the tzitzis on retroactively. You're putting the beged on after the tzitzis already on. According to what I'm saying, it's also tassel and also, but a third shot tassel and also is that you're making it from a rip and you're re-sewing it, and that's weaker than the original beged. It's going to be a problem. Tassel and also, not something that was made previously and you're re-sewing it. That is a problem. Hope you enjoyed today's shir. See you next week as we start Siman Ted Zion. We are really moving. Next week we'll be going through most of the concluding Simonim of Hilchos Tzitzis, and in 2 weeks' time, we will be making our way to Hilchos Tefillin. See you then. Have a good Shabbos. Be well. Bye.